Hey everyone, for our first lecture, we're going to start with the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution was a period from the 18th to the 19th century, where major changes in agriculture, manufacturing, mining, transportation, and technology had a profound effect on the socio-economic and cultural conditions of the times. It began in the United Kingdom, then subsequently spread throughout Europe, North America, and eventually the world. The Industrial Revolution marks a major turning point in human history. Almost every aspect of daily life was influenced in some way. Most notably, average income and population began to exhibit unprecedented and sustained growth. The Industrial Revolution introduced many new inventions that would change the world forever. It was a time epitomized by the wide-scale introduction of machinery, the transformation of cities, and significant technological developments in a wide range of areas. Many modern mechanisms have their origins from this period. Up until now, virtually all work has been handwork, using handmade tools and equipment, but with no machinery or assembly lines. The only source of power are human, and in limited ways, power was generated by horse, water, and wind. Denis Diderot wrote a large series of books documenting the hand manufacturing process of the 18th century. The image on the left is a page depicting the tools he used for processing hemp. The workers here are referred to as inmates. You'll be happy to know the most advanced piece of machinery Diderot documented was the wooden gearing of a mill grinding hops for making beer. So, again, the Industrial Revolution is the transition from manual labor to machine-based manufacturing. The image that you're looking at here on the slide is of a linen factory in Belfast. The people who would have been peasants working in agriculture and living in farmhouses previously became the mill hands in factories and moved to the cities, often living in grim slums made up of neglected and filthy tenements. Although children had been servants and apprentices throughout most of human history, child labor reached new extremes during the Industrial Revolution. Children often worked long hours in dangerous factory conditions for very little money. Children were used as laborers because their size allowed them to move in small spaces in factories or mines where adults couldn't fit. Children were easier to manage and control, and perhaps most importantly, children could be paid less than adults. Child laborers often worked to help support their families, but were forced to forgo an education. The Industrial Revolution is rooted in three leading sectors where there were key innovations: the mechanization of the textile industry, the development of iron-making techniques, and the increased use of refined coal. The spinning jenny was a spinning engine invented in 1764 by James Hargreaves. It was able to be operated by unskilled workers, and it was a key development in the industrialization of weaving. This first wave of industrialism is marked by a few key inventions. Number one, the steam engine. The steam engine was used as a source of power for pumping water and running the machinery for textile mills. Textile mills used the steam engine to power looms, making it possible to produce cheap cloth in great quantities. The steam engine was fueled by coal. The need to now transport massive amounts of coal from mines led to the invention of number two, the railroad. The railroad used rail cars pulled by a mobile version of the steam engine called the locomotive. The first recorded steam railway journey took place on February 21st, 1812. When a locomotive carried 10 tons of iron, 5 wagons, and 70 men, 9.75 miles in just 4 hours and 5 minutes. The journey had an average speed of around 2.4 miles per hour. 25 years later, George Stephenson and his son Robert Stephenson designed Stephenson's rocket, the most advanced locomotive of its day. The rocket's design, with its smoke chimney at the front and a separate firebox in the rear, became the template for the future steam locomotives for the next 150 years. Here's a picture of the first passenger carriage in Europe, pulled by Stephenson's rocket in 1830. All of this subsequently led to number 3, iron ships. Iron ships were built and powered by steam engines, which greatly improved sea travel and the intercontinental transport of goods. There were many other inventions during this time period. Just to list a few that you might recognize: telegraph communications were invented, dynamite was invented, the typewriter was invented, the electric generator, and the photograph. In 1826, French inventor Joseph Niepce invented the first permanent photograph of a camera image. He took it from his window using a camera obscura, a primitive camera creating the earliest surviving photograph of a real-world scene. So what relates all of this to architecture? Well, with the introduction of machinery, factories began springing up, first in Britain and then across the world. The man credited with inventing the modern factory is Richard Arkwright, after he constructed Cromford Mills in 1771. It was the first water-powered cotton spinning mill and initially employed 200 workers running day and night with 2 12-hour shifts. The key point of the Industrial Revolution relating to interior design is this: with engine power, factories require less manual labor, making goods less expensive and more readily available to the general public. Turning a bigger profit allows mills and factory owners to open more mills and factories, making them very wealthy individuals and eventually making countries that became industrialized very rich and powerful. Britain, closely followed by France, Germany, and the United States, became dominant world powers. The impact of early industrialization on interior design is that we see the first steps toward modern plumbing, lighting, and heating. Cast iron became inexpensive and used to make stoves, which replaced the open fireplace, and in the kitchen was called a range for cooking. These created heat using wood initially, and with the invention and improvements of the railroad coal, became readily available to power them. Systems for central heating gradually replaced stoves. Coal-fired furnaces were replaced in cellars to heat warm air, which was circulated in living spaces through pipes and grills called registers. Furnaces could also be arranged so that piped hot water could be available in bathrooms. Thank God. In cities, central piped water systems began to appear. Pressure made steam pumps that could lift water to high reservoirs or water towers so that gravity could bring water to bathrooms on the upper floors of buildings. You might have seen something like this all over the cityscape in Brooklyn. Subsequently, running water, flushing toilets, and a drain trap that blocked sewer gases from coming back into the house from the plumbing were also in general use. Showers and bathtubs were still luxuries, but became standard in houses over time. Remember, this is only the beginning of these inventions, and in the early 19th century, they were very rarely seen. Oil lamps were invented and went through a series of fuel options. First, it was colza oil, which is a vegetable oil, then whale oil, followed by mineral oil or petroleum and kerosene. Eventually, the discovery of illuminating gas began the introduction of city systems that piped gas used for lighting, cooking ranges, and heating devices, like the gas grate, which was placed in fireplaces and made open fires unnecessary. The image you're looking at here on the slide is of an early American tin whale oil lamp. The development of iron-making techniques also created a new building material that could replace wood and masonry. The need for strong bridges to carry railroads and large sheds for train stations brought engineering as a new profession. The first iron bridge was built in England to span the Severn River at Coalbrookdale in 1779. Here, you can see a few additional images of that bridge. This is an aqueduct built in Wales in 1805 that transports rail cars. Giant stone piers support 19 arches made of cast iron segments that are bolted together. Isambard Kingdom Brunel is an important figure in the Industrial Revolution. You'll hear more about him in a video for your next media response. What you're looking at here is the Great Eastern, an iron ship designed by Brunel in 1851. It was powered by 2 sets of steam engines. It had luxurious passenger accommodations that were decorated in the ornate taste of the Victorian era. Also designed by Brunel is Paddington Station in London from 1852 to 1854. Glass was now factory-made in large sheets. Because it is a light and transparent material, it was ideal for filling in iron frames to make train sheds. Brunel also engineered King's Cross Station in London, designed by Louis Cubitt. This building was originally conceived by Joseph Paxton as a greenhouse design. The Great Exhibition, also known as a World Fair, in Hyde Park in 1851, was held in this building, and it was called the Crystal Palace. Iron frames, columns, and girders, produced in a foundry, bolted together on site, and glazed with sheets of factory-made glass. The giant elm tree existed on the site, and the Crystal Palace was built around it. The palace was received so well it was reconstructed outside of London after the World Fair ended. Iron and glass structures like these became the first examples of modern design, although the highly decorative Victorian things held within them were a sharp contrast to the utilitarian architecture. At this time, the iron and glass building style was reserved mostly for train sheds, market halls, exhibition halls, mills, and other factory buildings. Another example, the Library of Saint Genevieve in Paris, used gaslight, making it possible for this to be the first French library open after dark. Notice the architectural feats that are possible because of the strength of iron. A row of thin iron columns support iron segmental arches that support the curved plaster ceiling. Also notice the design of the arches can even be perforated because of the strength of iron. A name you might recognize, Gustave Eiffel, was a French engineer that you probably know best for his tower. It was built for the Paris International Exhibition of 1889, and at the time was the tallest building ever built. It remained the tallest building until completion of the Chrysler Building in New York in 1930. What you may not know is that Eiffel also designed the interior structural elements for the Statue of Liberty. In Edward Morin's 1886 painting, The Statue of Liberty Enlightening the World, he depicts the unveiling of the Statue of Liberty. Here is an example of one of Eiffel's many bridge designs, the railway bridge over the Coura River in Portugal. So, the Industrial Revolution is a major paradigm shift in terms of the way people operate functionally, socially, and economically. Do you think there's a current revolution happening today? For our next media response, you'll be hearing from Tim Brown, CEO of IDEO, a California-based firm rooted in innovation and design thinking.